Today we're beginning chapter 10 of Tanya. So if you remember the beginning of Tanya, the very first chapter, we talked about 5 different categories of people in the Gemara. So we talked about the complete tzaddik, the incomplete tzaddik, the Beinoni, the Rasha, the wicked person who knows good, and the wicked person who knows evil. So what the Tanya is now going to do is guide us to have more of an in-depth understanding and appreciation who each one of these categories of people is. So we're going to start today with the incomplete tzaddik. So what exactly is the job qualification of being an incomplete tzaddik? It's kind of fun, like you go to like a cocktail party. Who are you? Oh, I'm a plumber. Who are you? Oh, I'm an incomplete tzaddik. Like, what does that mean, an incomplete tzaddik? So the job qualifications are a person who causes the divine soul to prevail over the animal soul. Okay? And a person who wages a war against the animal soul to the extent that he banishes and eradicates its evil from the left part of the heart. As is written, and shall eradicate the evil from your midst. Okay, so their godly soul wins, and they banish evil from their being. So they don't sound like such a bad person to me. So why are they called an incomplete tzaddik? So let's understand more about this category of person. He's called a tzaddik who knows evil, meaning that some vestige of evil still lingers within him. So remember, we either call him incomplete tzaddik or tzaddik viralo, who knows evil. So in the left part of his heart, right, there's still some vestige of evil, even though it finds no expression at all. It's not going to sense it. He's not going to notice that it's there. He's not going to have evil desires because of the minuteness of the evil that's still in his heart, and it's completely subjugated to the right side of his heart. So it's like null and void. It's nullified within him, and therefore he can't sense that that level of evil is still there. But in this case, it's a case of check yourself before you wreck yourself. We want to understand very clearly what is my spiritual reality. It's not about judgment. It's not even about perfectionism. I want to just understand where I am so I know who I am, how to understand myself, how to understand my connection with God, knowing what it is for me serving God. So if this person is going to think that, well, they sense no evil, they have no evil desires coming through them, so they're going to think they are completely good, that there's no vestige of evil in their heart. And so it's actually important for them to know that, yes, there is some vestige of evil still within their heart, even though they're not sensing it, because if that evil had completely been eradicated, it would have actually been converted into good, right? If all the evil is converted into good, then they would be a complete tzaddik. So I really like that, actually. It's not just about getting rid of all the evil. The full transformation of complete tzaddik only happens when a person's able to transform that evil into good, meaning as long as I haven't transformed it, I'm still connected to it, even on the most minute level. What is the job qualification of a complete tzaddik? A person whom the evil is being converted into good, who is called a tzaddik who knows only good. A tzaddik v'tovlo. So meaning all the good is not, all the evil within him is not just null and void. It's not just not sensed within him. It's not just nullified to the amount of good. Is that it's actually being converted into good, meaning he only knows good. So now we're going to learn about the complete tzaddik and their relationship with evil. So now that they've completely turned all the evils in themselves to good, what is the relationship with evil? He despises pleasure that is not God-focused, for they are derived from receive their spiritual sustenance from the klipa and sitra achra, right, the side of otherness, the very antithesis of holiness. The complete tzaddik utterly hates whatever is of the sitra achra. So moral of the story is that the tzaddik completely wants to cleave and connect with God. And therefore, anything that's going to be opposing God, so to speak, or concealing God, they do not have taste buds for. So why is he so disgusted by self-indulgent worldly pleasures? Like a tzaddik, complete tzaddik is just like grossed out by the idea of indulging in the material pleasures just for the sake of material pleasure, not for a higher purpose. This is because of the tzaddik's great love for God and holiness. He utterly hates klipa and sitra achra. So it's not like, we're not like into like, oh, I want to hate on this thing. It's no, I love God so much that anything that's going to come and conceal godliness, that I hate. You see the difference? It's not like, ooh, what can I hate on? You know, it's like, no, I love this so much. So of course, if you love someone, so you're naturally going to hate anything that's going to disconnect you from that person, right? If we love God and sitra achra and klipa disconnects me from God, then of course I'm going to hate that thing. Because of his great love, a profuse love of delights. You see how romantically it's written. And his superior degree of affection for God and his holiness. It is written, I hate them with a consuming hatred, says King David, of whom those who oppose God, right? So he hates them with consuming hatred. He wages the war of Hashem. They have become enemies to me. Search me, he says to God, and know my heart. Right? Because King David was so given over to God God's enemies became his enemies. Hashem's battles became his battles, right? So it's not coming out of, just being grossed out by worldly pleasure. That could be more of just a personality type thing. This is coming from a different place. This is coming from my deep desire to connect to God, and therefore my hatred of anything that opposes that. The more intense a tzaddik's love of God is, the more intense his hatred and repugnance of anything God hates. And God hates evil, and therefore the complete tzaddik hates evil. Complete tzaddik has attained this level by completely removing his filthy garments from evil. Meaning he went on the self-indulgent pleasure detox that we talked about. We talked about how self-indulgent pleasure introduces us to sitra achra, and that the side of otherness is going to have its effect on me. It's going to desensitize me to godliness and make me forget about what the true pleasures of life is. I'm going to get so caught up in the facades. And so because the complete tzaddik has this self-indulgent pleasure detox, until he sensitizes himself to only enjoy godly pleasure and to be repulsed by the opposite, right? So that is the level of sensitivity of this individual. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the incomplete tzaddik's relationship with evil. Right, so now we understand that the complete tzaddik utterly detests evil because he loves God so much and therefore is going to hate anything that disconnects him from God. But what about the incomplete tzaddik? Since he does not utterly detest the sitra achra, he's therefore not completely repulsed by it either. As long as the loathing and repulsion is not absolute, there must necessarily remain a trace of love of evil and pleasure in the sitra achra, in the side of otherness. Meaning that the soiled garments, aka his attachments to physical pleasures, have not been completely and thoroughly discarded. Meaning, because of this tzaddik's love is not complete with God, right? They're the incomplete tzaddik. There's a level of love that's lacking. Therefore, their detest for anything that's going to separate this, deep loving connection isn't complete. And because they're not completely repulsed by it, they don't have the full sensitivity. They still have some attachment to the soiled garments, no matter, even if it's incredibly minute, right? We're talking about someone, they're the tzaddik, but just it's not complete, that is level. So, because these soiled garments, these attachments to the mundane pleasures have not been completely discarded. So this doesn't mean that an incomplete tzaddik is going to involve themselves in mundane pleasures. No, in which case they would not be the complete tzaddik. They have no trace of this evil. They don't sense it in any part of their being. That being said, they're not completely sensitized to the point that they find evil repulsive or that they want to just be as far away from it as possible because of this deep love for God that they have. Because on some minute level, he's still emotionally attached to the soiled garments, self-indulgent pleasures. Therefore, his love of God lacks its full intensity. And that's why we're calling him the incomplete tzaddik, because on that level, his love isn't complete. Like an addict who has shifted their behaviors so that they no longer sense any level of addiction. Yet they're not yet at a place where they have sensitized themselves to be disgusted by it. Therefore, there's a level of transformation that cannot yet happen. So there's the idea of sur meira, stay away from evil, and then aseh tov, do good. So it's not just staying away from evil. There's a level where that evil actually turns into the goodness, so where I can actually now take that evil and do something good with it. So there's a difference between just distancing myself from it versus actually going back and transforming the thing into something purposeful and beautiful and for God's sake. Because the filthy garments, aka their emotional attachment to worldly pleasures, have not been completely shed, the evil cannot be transformed to good. As long as they still have some attachment to the evil, they're not ready to transform that evil into pure good. So this type of tzaddik gets two names. A tzaddik who it's good for him, but really if you look at it carefully, the ra is low. The ra is nullified, the evil is nullified to him, to the goodness within him. Meaning, the evil within him is nullified to the good in him, to such a point that he doesn't even experience it. And the other idea is the incomplete tzaddik. His love of God isn't yet complete, and therefore he doesn't utterly detest evil.